Guys, you see what Ghana is really suffering right now? Nigeria suffered it in the 50s and the 60s. I need to actually explain to you guys about all of this. And we took almost their own steps. But somebody, Fela, actually came to change the narratives. And we should be appreciative of the fact that Fela brought in Afrobeat that changed the music culture in Africa. In the 50s and the 60s, Highlife from Ghana, the likes of Emmanuel Tete Mensah actually took over Nigerian music environment with the Highlife from Ghana to an extent. A lot of people in Nigeria were quite dazzled with this, while some people were really envious of the fact that Ghana is taking over Nigerian music industry with their own Highlife. That culminated into something else at that time. Right now, Nigeria is reigning global. That is something you need to understand. And a lot of countries in Africa are not really comfortable with the fact that Nigeria is dominating even in their own music industry. That is something we really need to be careful about, because if we fight with envy in our mind, I think you cannot really win the fight. You have to be systemic and you have to be collaborative to an extent and make Nigeria to understand the need to also export your music to the nooks and cranny of this world. As at the time Ghana was dominating our airwaves, in 1956, the Nigerian Musician Association or Union came out with a particular policy, internal policy, to make sure they stop, Ghana Highlife from being performed at clubs in Nigeria to an extent. And that really didn't sit well to an extent, because a particular member of that music association in Nigeria was already in love and collaborating with Ghanaians to an extent at that time. That is a person of Bobby Benson, who owns a club also. This guy decided to go into the studio and make a song called Taxi Driver, which actually made Nigeria to be popular at that time, and a lot of people encouraged him to do more at that time. It was not easy for Nigerians to compete with Ghana on this particular issue, because Ghana was already ahead in terms of Highlife. In 1962, the NBC, Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, was instructed by the government to show love and to show affection and loyalty to Nigerian brand to an extent by actually playing Nigerian songs on radio at that time. But that didn't sit well, because there were insiders actually fighting this particular thing, because we believe that Ghana was still our brothers at that time. Although a lot of rancor, a lot of things happened until Fela came in with a new revolution in the music industry. In 1971, Fela broke in with Afrobeat in the Nigerian music industry. That was it for Nigeria to an extent. You need to understand how the fight went. If we had told the line of Highlife, Ghana was already ahead. But the likes of Fela decided to say, let us bring a tweak to this and to actually make it our own brand to an extent. And that is what you see as Afrobeat right now, which has become a global phenomenon to an extent. Afrobeat from Fela took on Highlife, took on jazz, funk, and other sounds to actually make a unique sound for himself. And that dominated the airwaves in the 70s to an extent. In the 90s, the likes of Remedy, Plantation Boys, Two-Face, and a lot of others actually took the airwaves to an extent. And that is to show you that Fela actually charted a course, and they decided to make it Afrobeats, because Fela came in with Afrobeats. And now Nigerians decided to say, let us put more value to it, let us put more flesh to this and make it Afrobeats to an extent. That is why you see Nigeria dominating the airwaves. And the invention of platforms have made it easier for these countries not to be able to fight Nigerian music to an extent, because if you do, a lot of people are already globalized in terms of Nigerian Afrobeat, and you cannot win the race. All you have to do is to collaborate with Nigeria to help you export your sound, which South Africa is really doing with their Amapiano. Nigerians are taking on Amapiano and exporting it to other parts of the world. In Canada, in US, Amapiano is really the game right now, courtesy Nigeria, because they cannot play Amapiano in those countries without playing Nigerian songs on it. And that is to show you that Nigeria has decided to help export their sound. Checking the global recognition from Grammy, you see that Nigerians with Amapiano sounds were really nominated for the Grammys, and that is a dominance in the music environment. All they need right now is collaboration with Nigeria to chart this course. That is to show you how Nigeria got it right, charting a new course in the Afrobeat sector. Another unique thing about Nigeria. We will talk more about this in our next video. Guys, trending on social media right now is the story of TB Joshua, a documentary story that was released by BBC, and a lot of people are really talking about it, and it's all trending out on social media. We need to be careful when this issue comes out. Both believers in the faith and non-believers are really talking about it, and you need to understand that the media has been hijacked by some persons to kind of destroy some persons or nations. That is something you need to understand about the whole thing. The advent of Donald Trump in US actually made us to understand that they can use the media to remove a government whom they don't like. That is what we need to actually understand about the whole thing. But right now in Africa, a lot of people are taking it to be a Nigerian problem or Nigerian thing. This is not a Nigerian thing. This is a global issue. We need to get to understand. We should not be brainwashed in this particular thing. Already many people that are believing that this story from BBC is actually true. They are those people that does not believe the man before in the first place, or don't really like the man, and they are coming out with this kind of story. While some other persons are in the other device, they believe that yes, BBC could be influenced to make this kind of story. Why didn't they bring out the story when he was alive? And some people are really coming out, like Idris Abdul Karim said, BBC has no right to actually put out the story if they've not put out a story on how the colonial masters treated Nigerians, Gold Coast, Ghana, and other countries in Africa. They've not done well enough to put that kind of story out there, and that is really disturbing to an extent, and I cannot really attest to the fact to say that BBC is actually wrong, because we've seen where they become biased, especially telling African stories to the world to an extent to make it look like yes, they are the saints. When our politicians steal money from African soil, where do they take this money to? They take it to this country. The case of lithium being stolen from Africa, petroleum being stolen from Africa, and gold being stolen from Africa, some of our mineral resources being stolen from Africa, where are they going to? Do we find documentary actually exposing the culprit of these things? That is what a lot of people are really asking. Ghanaians, I listened to a particular podcast show, Ghanaian podcast show. They actually did well enough to elaborate on all of these things, talking about their words and all these kind of things. I want you to catch a glimpse before I dive into the story.
The conspiracy theories here for the social media right now, no be small. Where right now agenda boys within the feast.
Yes, from the discussion, though some of them were sounding biased, while some were sounding neutral, I kind of respect their effort of trying to balance the whole talk.